Billionaire mocked his black wife as ugly for 10 years. She returned as New York's stunning model loved by. Heat flooded Denise's cheeks. Around them, conversations quieted. People pretended not to listen while hanging on every word. This was entertainment for them, watching a powerful man put his wife in her place. Have you ever been made to feel worthless by someone who promised to love you? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She stood in the marble bathroom of their $50 million mansion, staring at bruises that weren't physical but hurt deeper than any blow. Have you ever felt invisible in your own home? Have you ever been made to feel worthless by someone who promised to love you? Tonight, Denise Briggs would discover that 10 years of emotional abuse had a breaking point. What happens when a woman finally stops accepting crumbs and demands the fee she deserves? The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Houston mansion like bullets against glass. Denise pressed her forehead against the cool surface, watching lightning split the Texas sky. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast perfect light on perfect furniture in a perfect prison she'd helped build with her silence. "Denise!" Nathaniel's voice cut through the house like a blade. "Get down here. Now!" She closed her eyes and counted to 5, the way her mother taught her before facing anything that might break you. Her reflection stared back from the bathroom mirror, still beautiful at 32, still the woman who'd caught his eye at that Dallas internship. But her eyes told a different story. They held the weight of 1,000 small deaths, each one delivered by the man who claimed to love her. The charity gala downstairs buzzed with Houston's elite. Oil executives, tech billionaires, politicians, all gathered in their home to write checks and feel good about themselves. She'd planned every detail, from the orchid centerpieces to the champagne selection. Yet Nathaniel would take credit, as always. She slipped into the black Valentino dress he'd chosen for her. Classy but not attention-grabbing, he'd said. You know how these women can be about competition. Downstairs, the crowd parted as she entered. Conversations paused, glasses stopped halfway to lips. Even after 10 years of marriage, Denise still turned heads. Her mother's Cherokee cheekbones, her father's deep brown skin, and something indefinable that photographers once called magnetic, before Nathaniel convinced her that dreams were for other people. "There she is," Nathaniel announced, his arms sliding around her waist like a shackle. "My beautiful wife, the real treasure of this house." The crowd laughed politely. They always did. But she caught the looks, the way some women's eyes lingered on her, then shifted to him with something like pity. Did they know? Could they see what happened when the cameras stopped rolling? Margaret Whitman, wife of a tech mogul, approached with that smile wealthy white women perfected in finishing school. "Denise, darling, this party is absolutely divine. You must share your secret. How do you make it look so effortless?" Before Denise could answer, Nathaniel's grip tightened on her waist. "Oh, she doesn't plan these things herself," he laughed. "I hire the best event coordinators money can buy. Denise just stands there and looks pretty. Don't you, sweetheart?" The words hit like a slap. She'd spent 3 weeks coordinating every detail, calling vendors, managing RSVPs, ensuring tonight would be perfect. But in one sentence, he'd erased her existence. Margaret's smile faltered. "Oh, I thought." "You thought what?" Nathaniel's voice carried that edge she knew too well. "That my wife was some kind of party planner? Please. She's far too delicate for that kind of work." Heat flooded Denise's cheeks. Around them, conversations quieted. People pretended not to listen while hanging on every word. This was entertainment for them, watching a powerful man put his wife in her place. "Actually," Denise said, her voice surprisingly steady, "I did plan this entire evening. Every flower, every song, every menu item. I also manage the foundation's charity work, coordinate volunteer efforts, and somehow find time to raise our son while you're busy building your empire." The silence stretched like a hell breath. Nathaniel's smile never wavered, but his eyes turned cold. "Sweetheart, you're tired. Why don't you go upstairs and rest? Let the adults handle business." That word, adults, hung in the air like poison gas. In front of 50 influential people, he just called her child, reduced her to something less than human, less than worthy of basic respect. Margaret cleared her throat and excused herself. Others followed, suddenly fascinated by the silent auction items across the room. Within moments, they stood alone in their own home, surrounded by people who'd witnessed her humiliation and chosen comfort over courage. "You embarrass me," Nathaniel hissed in her ear. "These people expect a certain standard for my wife, not some angry black woman having an attitude." The racial undertone hit like a physical blow. After 10 years, he could still find new ways to make her feel small. She looked around their mansion, the art she'd chosen, the color she'd selected, the life she'd built and he'd slowly poisoned. "What standard?" she whispered. "Being white." His laugh was cold as December wind. "Being grateful, being aware of your place, being smart enough not to bite the hand that feeds you." Thunder crashed outside, and something inside her cracked. Not broke, cracked, like ice beginning to shift before it shatters completely. She walked upstairs without another word, leaving him to his guests and his empire built on other people's dreams. In their bedroom, she stared at the king-sized bed where intimacy had died years ago, replaced by duty and endurance. When had she stopped fighting? When had she accepted that this was love? Her laptop sat on the vanity, screen dark as her future felt. But as lightning illuminated the room again, she saw something else. Reflection of a woman who'd forgotten her own power, yes, but also the ghost of the girl who'd once believed she could conquer the world. Drop a heart if you've ever felt like you were shrinking yourself to fit someone else's expectations. Her fingers moved across the keyboard before she could stop them. Not a goodbye letter, but something far more dangerous. The truth about the foundation money he'd skimmed, about the bribes to city officials, about the workers he'd cheated and the families he'd destroyed. As thunder crashed outside, Denise made a decision that would change everything. She opened his laptop and began typing. Not a goodbye letter, but something far more dangerous, the truth. The email she sent that night would destroy his reputation, but first, it would free her soul. Nathaniel's laptop glowed like a confession booth in the dark bedroom. Outside, Houston's storm raged with the same fury building inside her chest. 10 years of swallowed words, 10 years of accepted insults, 10 years of dying by degrees. Tonight, that ended. Her fingers trembled over the keyboard. The email addresses loaded like bullets in a chamber. Houston Chronicle, Channel 7 News, the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, the IRS. Every reporter who'd ever smiled at their charity events while secretly hunting for the story that would make their career. The documents were all here, hidden in folders he thought she'd never find. Bank transfers to offshore accounts. Fraudulent charity reports. Photos of properties bought with money meant for homeless shelters. He'd been so careful to hide his crimes from investigators, but he'd forgotten the most dangerous witness of all, the woman who shared his bed and his darkest secrets. She attached file after file, each one another nail in the coffin of their marriage. Then she typed the message that would change both their lives forever. "My husband, Nathaniel Briggs, has stolen over $12 million in charity funds while publicly claiming to help Houston's most vulnerable citizens. He has bribed city officials, falsified documents, and destroyed families for profit. I can no longer remain silent while he destroys lives and expects me to smile for the cameras. The attached evidence will show you exactly what kind of man Houston has been celebrating. I will testify to whatever authorities require. A woman who's done being silent." Her finger hovered over the send button. Once she pressed it, there was no going back. No more mansion, no more designer clothes, no more security that money could buy. But also no more shame, no more silence, no more accepting crumbs from a man who saw her as less than human. Lightning split the sky again, and in that flash of light, she saw herself clearly for the first time in years. Not the decorative wife, not the grateful recipient of his conditional love, but the woman who'd once dreamed of changing the world. The woman who designed clothes in her college dorm room, who'd volunteered at women's shelters, who believed love meant lifting each other up instead of tearing each other down. She pressed send. The computer chimed softly, such a small sound to signal the destruction of an empire. But as the storm raged outside, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop running from truth. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Nathaniel's voice carried from downstairs, still playing the perfect host while his world crumbled in cyberspace. She had maybe 30 minutes before someone checked their phone, maybe an hour before the call started coming. Time enough for what came next. She pulled their suitcase from the closet, the one they'd used for romantic getaways back when romance was still possible between them. Now it would carry her towards something else entirely. Freedom. Into the suitcase went the few things that mattered. Photos of her son Marcus, her mother's jewelry, the sketches she'd hidden in her vanity drawer. Dreams postponed but never abandoned, waiting for the courage she'd finally found. The bedroom door opened, and Nathaniel stepped inside, loosening his tie. Still handsome at 45, still carrying himself like a man who owned the world. In a few hours, he'd discover how quickly ownership could transfer. Great party, he said without looking at her. Senator Williams wants to discuss that downtown development project. Could mean another $50 million in contracts. She zipped the suitcase closed. The sound made him turn. Going somewhere, his voice carried amusement, like she was a child playing dress-up. Yes. She met his eyes for the first time all evening. Away from you. He laughed, that cold sound she'd heard 1,000 times. Don't be dramatic, Denise. So you got your feelings hurt downstairs. You'll get over it. You always do. No. The word came out stronger than she'd expected. I won't. Not this time. Something in her tone made him step closer. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done. She lifted the suitcase, surprised by how light it felt. Done being your decoration. Done being your excuse for charity work. Done being grateful for scraps from a man who sees me as less than human. His face changed then, shifting from amusement to something sharper. You're upset. I understand. But let's be reasonable here. You have a good life. Designer clothes, beautiful home, respect in the community. You think you'll find better out there? I'll find myself out there. The woman I was before you convinced me I was worthless. Worthless. He stepped closer, voice dropping to that dangerous whisper she knew meant trouble. I made you. I took a nobody from Atlanta and gave you everything. This house, this life, this status, all of it comes from me. Without me, you're just another pretty black girl with big dreams and no way to achieve them. The racial venom in his voice should have hurt. Once, it would have sent her running to the bathroom to cry in silence. Tonight, it just made her stronger. You're right about one thing, she said, moving toward the door. I'm just a black girl with big dreams. But you're wrong about everything else. I don't need you to achieve them. He grabbed her arm as she passed, fingers digging into skin. You're not leaving me. I won't let you. She looked down at his hand, then back at his face. Let me go, Nathaniel. Or what? You'll call the police? Report me for touching my own wife. His grip tightened. You think they'll believe you over me? You think anyone in this city will choose your word against mine? For a moment, the old fear flickered. He was right. Who would believe her? Who would risk their own position to defend a woman most people saw as lucky to have landed such a successful husband? Then she smiled, and something in that expression made him step back. I'm not calling the police, she said quietly. I don't need to. By morning, you'll have bigger problems than one ungrateful wife. Confusion flashed across his features. What are you talking about? She pulled free of his grip and walked to the door. Check your email, darling. I sent some interesting documents to some very interested people. Your charity work, your business dealings, your offshore accounts, everything. The color drained from his face. You wouldn't dare. Already did. She paused at the doorway, looking back at the bedroom where she'd lost herself for 10 years. You taught me to be grateful, Nathaniel. So thank you. Thank you for showing me exactly what I deserve by showing me what I don't. She walked downstairs, past the caterers cleaning up the remains of their last party together, past the photos documenting a marriage that had died long before tonight. At the front door, She paused to look back one last time at the mansion that had been her prison. Marcus was at boarding school, safe from whatever storm was coming. She'd call him tomorrow, explain as much as a 16-year-old could understand. For now, he was better off away from the destruction she'd unleashed. Thunder crashed again as she stepped into the storm. Rain soaked through her designer dress within seconds, but she'd never felt more alive. The woman who'd entered that mansion 10 years ago had been looking for love. The one leaving had found something better, herself. Have you ever had a moment where you suddenly saw your relationship clearly? When the fog lifted and you realized your worth. Behind her, she heard Nathaniel's voice shouting her name. Then silence as he must have found the laptop and realized what she'd done. By tomorrow, his empire would be crumbling. By next week, his freedom would be in question. But tonight, walking through the storm toward an uncertain future, Denise Briggs felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. And for the first time in years, that was enough. She kissed their sleeping son goodbye through a phone call that would have to wait until morning and whispered a promise that would take 18 years to fulfill. Mama's going to show you what strength looks like. She disappeared like smoke, leaving behind only questions and a marriage certificate that suddenly felt like evidence of a crime. The rain had stopped by dawn, but Houston still smelled like lightning and new beginnings. Nathaniel stood in his empty bedroom, staring at the space where his wife's belongings used to live. No note, no forwarding address, no trace of the woman who'd shared his life for 10 years, except for the smoking ruins of his empire spread across every news channel in Texas. His phone buzzed like an angry wasp. 37 missed calls. 15 from his lawyer, 12 from business partners, 10 from reporters who'd once kissed his ring and now smelled blood in the water. The vultures were circling, and for the first time in his adult life, Nathaniel Briggs felt genuine fear. Channel 7 had run the story at 6 a.m. Charity fraud exposed by whistleblower wife. By 7, CNN picked it up. By 8, FBI agents were knocking on doors across Houston, armed with warrants and Denise's evidence. The front page of the Houston Chronicle showed his photo next to numbers that made his stomach turn. $12 million in stolen charity funds. $2 million in bribes to city officials. Properties worth $30 million purchased with money meant for homeless shelters and women's refuges. But it was the quote that destroyed him, printed in bold letters beneath his photo. He told me I should be grateful he married me at all. I realized he was right. I should be grateful. Grateful enough to make sure no one else suffers while he pretends to be a hero. Anonymous source. She hadn't signed her name, but everyone knew. In a city where gossip traveled faster than hurricanes, Denise's disappearance the same night as the expose left no doubt about the identity of his betrayer. His phone rang again. Marcus, calling from boarding school in Connecticut. Dad? His son's voice sounded younger than 16, confused and scared. Kids here saying stuff about you on social media. About Mom. What's happening? Nathaniel stared out the window at news vans lining his circular driveway like modern-day covered wagons. Nothing you need to worry about, son. Just some business complications. They're saying Mom left. That she's the one who... Marcus's voice cracked. Is it true? About the money? The question hung between them like a noose. His son deserved the truth, but truth was a luxury Nathaniel could no longer afford. Your mother's going through a difficult time. She's made some poor decisions. Silence stretched across the connection. Then Marcus spoke again, his voice harder now, older. That's not what I asked. Before Nathaniel could answer, FBI agents appeared at his study door. Mr. Briggs? We have a warrant for your arrest. The call ended. Whether Marcus hung up or the phone slipped from Nathaniel's hands, he couldn't tell. All he knew was that the last voice connecting him to anything good in his life had just gone silent, and armed federal agents were reading him rights he'd never imagined needing. 3 months later, released on $10 million bail that had cost him every liquid asset he could liquidate, Nathaniel sat in his lawyer's office staring at a report that made his blood run cold. She's vanished, Detective Ray Morrison said, sliding the file across the mahogany table. Completely. No credit card activity, no bank withdrawals, no employment records, no rental agreements. It's like Denise Briggs ceased to exist the night she left her house. Nathaniel's fingers shook as he opened the folder. Photos of empty apartments, closed bank accounts, disconnected phone numbers. The private investigator had spent 3 months and $250,000 chasing shadows. Someone doesn't disappear this completely without help, his lawyer, Patricia Chun, said. She was the best criminal defense attorney money could buy, but even she looked worried. Professional help, federal witness protection, maybe, or... She's not in witness protection, Morrison interrupted. I checked. FBI says she's not in any federal program. She's just gone. Nathaniel studied the photos again. The apartment in Montrose where she'd supposedly been seen, empty for months. The women's shelter where someone claimed to have spotted her. No record of any Denise Briggs volunteering or seeking help. What about her family in Atlanta? Morrison shook his head. Mother died 2 years ago, cancer. No siblings, no close relatives. Her college friends haven't heard from her. It's like she planned this for years, creating a perfect exit strategy. The words hit like bullets. Planned for years. How long had she been plotting his destruction? How many nights had she lain beside him, smiling and submissive, while secretly documenting his crimes? The woman he dismissed as weak and decorative had played a game he never knew they were playing. There's something else, Morrison said, pulling out another photo. This was taken at LaGuardia Airport the morning after she left. Airport security cameras caught this image. The photo was grainy, black and white, but unmistakable. A woman in dark clothes and sunglasses, hair hidden under a scarf, walking through the departure gate toward a flight bound for New York City. Her face was turned away from the camera, but the posture, the height, the graceful way she moved, it was Denise. New York, Nathaniel whispered. The city where dreams either died or exploded into life. Where a beautiful woman with determination could disappear into millions of faces or emerge as someone entirely new. Trail goes cold there, Morrison said. No hotel records, no rental car receipts, nothing. She knew what she was doing. Patricia Chun leaned forward. Nathaniel, we need to focus on your case, not your wife's whereabouts. The trial starts in 6 months. Her testimony is the prosecution's strongest weapon, but if she's truly vanished, she'll surface. The words came out harder than Nathaniel intended. She's not done with me yet. This was just the opening move. Both lawyers stared at him. Morrison spoke first. What makes you think that? Nathaniel closed the file and stood, looking out at Houston's skyline from the 42nd floor. His city, his empire, reduced to legal bills and public humiliation. But somewhere out there, the woman who destroyed him was starting over, becoming someone new. Because I know her, he said quietly. Better than she thinks I do. Denise doesn't do anything halfway. She's not hiding from me. She's preparing for something bigger. The room fell silent except for the hum of air, conditioning, and the distant sound of traffic far below. In those 3 months since she'd vanished, Nathaniel's world had collapsed with surgical precision. Business partners had abandoned him. Charity boards had expelled him. Friends had stopped returning calls. But in the quiet moments between crisis management and legal preparation, he found himself thinking not about his ruined reputation or potential prison sentence. He thought about the woman who'd shared his bed for 10 years, who'd raised his son, who'd smiled for cameras while documenting evidence that would destroy him. For the first time since their wedding day, he felt something like respect for her, and that terrified him more than any federal indictment. What would you take if you had to start over with nothing? What would you leave behind? The private investigator's report landed on his desk 3 months later with a post-it note attached. Subject has completely vanished. No trace found. Case closed unless you want to spend more money chasing ghosts. But ghosts, Nathaniel was learning, had a way of becoming very real when you least expected them. And somewhere in New York City, a woman named Diana was stepping into her first modeling agency, carrying nothing but determination and a new identity built on the ashes of everything she'd left behind. The woman who'd once begged for his approval was gone forever. In her place, someone stronger was being born. Someone who would make the world remember that underestimating a black woman from the South was the most expensive mistake a powerful man could make. The question wasn't whether she'd surface again. The question was whether he'd recognize her when she did. She traded Southern mansions for a Brooklyn studio, designer gowns for thrift store finds, and a name that carried shame for one that whispered possibility. The apartment was smaller than Nathaniel's walk-in closet, but it was hers. Diana Martinez. The name felt strange on her tongue, chosen from her grandmother's maiden name and her college roommate's suggestion. Stood at the single window overlooking Prospect Heights, watching Brooklyn come alive in the early morning light. 6 months in New York had taught her things they don't teach in finishing school or charity board meetings. How to stretch $15 into a week's worth of meals. How to navigate the subway without looking like a tourist. How to smile at casting calls when your feet were bleeding inside secondhand heels. But mostly, she learned how to breathe again. The mirror above her tiny bathroom sink showed a woman Nathaniel wouldn't recognize. Gone was the perfectly styled hair, replaced by natural curls that caught light like they were celebrating freedom. Gone were the designer clothes chosen to make her invisible, replaced by thrift store finds that actually fit her personality instead of his expectations. Her phone buzzed with a text from Malik, the photographer who'd become her first real friend in the city. Casting at 2 p.m. Milan campaign. Bring the energy we talked about. You got this, D. The energy. That was what everyone noticed first now. Not her beauty. New York was full of beautiful women. But the way she carried herself, like she was done apologizing for taking up space in the world. She pulled on the black dress she'd worn to 3 different castings this week, paired with boots that had walked more miles in 6 months than in 10 years of marriage. The woman in the mirror looked back with eyes that sparkled with something Denise Briggs had never possessed. Hope mixed with determination, seasoned with just enough anger to keep her moving forward. The modeling agency waited in Midtown, glass and steel reaching toward clouds that looked nothing like Texas sky. Inside, other women sat in perfect rows, each one stunning enough to stop traffic, each one fighting for the same dream that had brought Diana here. But when her name was called, Diana Martinez, she stood differently than the others. Not with the desperate hunger of someone who needed this, but with the quiet confidence of someone who deserved it. The casting director, a sharp-eyed woman named Rebecca Torres, looked up from her tablet as Diana entered the studio. Tell me about yourself. The question that used to terrify her now felt like an invitation. I'm from the South originally. Moved here to start over. Chase dreams I've forgotten I had. I know I'm older than most women starting in this industry, but I think that's my strength. I know who I am. Rebecca's eyes narrowed with interest. What kind of dreams? Diana smiled, and it was different from the practiced expression she'd worn at Houston charity galas. This one came from somewhere real. The kind that scare me before. The kind that require you to believe you're worth something. Walk for me. The studio felt different than she'd expected. Not the sterile perfection of Nathaniel's world, but alive with creative energy. Diana moved across the space like she owned it, not because she was arrogant, but because she finally understood what Malik had tried to teach her. Confidence wasn't about being perfect, it was about being authentic. Stop. Rebecca held up her hand, then walked around Diana like she was studying a sculpture. You move like you've survived something. The observation should have stung. Instead, Diana felt seen in a way that had nothing to do with her appearance. We've all survived something. The trick is letting it make you stronger instead of smaller. Rebecca smiled for the first time since Diana had walked in. Can you be here Monday morning? 6 a.m. call time. It's a campaign about resilience, about women who've overcome obstacles. I think you might be exactly what we're looking for. The subway ride back to Brooklyn felt like floating. Her first real booking, not just catalog work or small local shoots, but a national campaign that would put her face in magazines across the country. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was about to become visible in a way that terrified and thrilled her simultaneously. Her phone rang as she climbed the stairs to her apartment. Marcus, Mom? His voice had changed in the months since Houston. Deeper now, more careful. I got a number from Aunt Joyce. Her heart stopped. She kept in contact with her late mother's sister, the only family member who knew where she really was. "Baby, how are you?" Confused. The honesty in his voice broke something inside her chest. "Dad's trial starts next month. The lawyers keep asking about you, where you are, if you'll testify." She sank on her bed, really just a mattress on the floor, but it was hers. "What do you want me to do?" Silence stretched between them. Then Marcus spoke, his voice stronger than she'd ever heard it. "I want you to tell the truth. About everything. About what he did to you, what he did to other people, what he did to us." Tears she'd been holding back for months finally spilled over. "That might hurt him badly." "Good." The word came out sharp, angry. "He hurt you. He hurt people who needed help. He hurt me by making me think marriage was supposed to look like what you two had." The wisdom in her 16-year-old son's voice made her proud and heartbroken simultaneously. "I'm sorry you saw that. Sorry I didn't leave sooner." "Are you happy now?" he asked. "Are you safe?" She looked around her tiny apartment, at the sketches she'd started drawing again, at the acceptance letter from a community college fashion program she'd applied to on a whim. "I'm becoming happy. I'm definitely safe." "Then I'm proud of you for leaving." The words she'd needed to hear from the person whose opinion mattered most. They talked for another hour about school, about his plans for college, about everything except the elephant in the room, when they would see each other again. After he hung up, Diana sat in the growing darkness of her apartment and made a decision that surprised even her. She pulled out her laptop and began typing an email to the federal prosecutor handling Nathaniel's case. "My name is Denise Briggs. I am the wife of defendant Nathaniel Briggs and the source of the evidence in your case. I am ready to testify. Here is where you can reach me." She hit send before she could change her mind. Going back to Houston would mean facing cameras, facing questions, facing the life she'd walked away from. But it would also mean standing up in front of the world and saying that what he'd done was wrong. Not just the financial crimes, but the way he'd treated her, the way he'd made her feel worthless. Her phone buzzed with another text from Alec. "Heard about the booking? Drinks to celebrate? You're about to be everywhere, girl." She smiled, typing back. "Rain check. I have to go back to Texas first. Time to finish what I started." Have you ever reinvented yourself completely? What gave you the courage to start over? Outside her window, Brooklyn hummed with the energy of 8 million people chasing dreams, and Diana realized she wasn't running anymore. She was finally ready to fight. But first, she was going to become exactly what Nathaniel had always told her she could never be, a woman the whole world would remember. The magazine hit newsstands nationwide the following week, her first major campaign. But she hadn't considered that someone might be watching, someone who would recognize those eyes he'd tried so hard to dim. In a Houston jail cell, awaiting trial, Nathaniel Briggs stared at a copy of Vogue magazine with hands that shook like autumn leaves. The woman on the cover was a stranger, confident, radiant, successful, but the eyes were unmistakable. His wife hadn't just disappeared. She transformed into everything he'd convinced her she could never become. And now she was coming home to destroy what was left of his world. Success tasted sweeter than revenge, until the day she realized they might be the same thing. The cameras love her like they've been waiting their whole mechanical lives for Diana Martinez to step into the light. 6 months after that first Vogue campaign, her face graced billboard from Times Square to Sunset Boulevard. Fashion Week directors fought over her availability. Photographers canceled other shoots just for the chance to capture whatever it was that made her different from every other beautiful woman in New York. Diana stood in the makeup chair at a Soho studio, watching artists transform her face into art while her mind calculated the distance she'd traveled. Literally 1,200 miles from Houston to New York. Emotionally, immeasurable. "You're glowing today," murmured Carmen, the makeup artist who'd become something like a friend. "Different kind of energy. Good news." Diana smiled at her reflection. Today's shoot was for the cover of Harper's Bazaar, her first major magazine cover. But the real news was folded in her purse, a letter from the federal prosecutor confirming her testimony date. 3 weeks from now, she'd stand in a Houston courtroom and face the man who'd spent 10 years convincing her she was worthless. "Something like that," she said. The photographer for today's shoot was Michael Chun, known for capturing women at their most powerful. His studio walls were covered with images of CEOs, activists, artists, women who'd changed the world just by refusing to accept limitations. Diana, darling. Michael's voice carried that particular mix of artistic passion and deadline panic. Ready to make magic? She moved to the set, a minimalist backdrop that would focus attention entirely on her. The concept was simple: strength through vulnerability, power through authenticity. Everything Nathaniel had taught her to hide. Tell me about your journey, Michael said, camera already clicking. What brought you here? The question was professional, meant to evoke emotion for better shots. But Diana felt it deeper than that. I used to believe other people's opinions about my worth, she said, movement flowing naturally as she spoke. Took me a while to realize that was their limitation, not mine. Click. Flash. Beautiful. What changed? I got tired of being small, tired of apologizing for existing. She turned toward the camera, and something in her expression made Michael lower his equipment. Hold that thought, he said quietly. That look right there, that's the cover shot. He was right. The image would become iconic. Diana staring directly into the lens with eyes that held fire and forgiveness in equal measure. Her natural hair catching light like a crown, skin glowing with health and happiness she'd forgotten was possible. But success, Diana was learning, came with complications she hadn't anticipated. Diana Martinez for Harper's Bazaar, the interviewer said, settling into the chair across from her in the magazine's Manhattan offices. 6 months ago, no one knew your name. Now you're everywhere. Tell us about the woman behind the phenomenon. The questions started easy. Favorite designers, beauty routine, career goals. Standard celebrity profile material. But Diana could feel the interviewer probing for something more personal, more controversial. The kind of story that sold magazines. You started modeling later than most women in this industry, the interviewer noted. What were you doing before? Diana's training from charity galas served her well. How to deflect personal questions with grace while revealing just enough to seem authentic. I was married, living a very different kind of life. Sometimes it takes a while to find your own path. Married to whom? The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Diana smiled, the expression giving away nothing. Someone who's no longer part of my story. After the interview, Diana walked through Central Park, needing space to think. The trees were beginning their autumn transformation, leaves turning colors that reminded her of the fire she'd found inside herself. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the Harper's Bazaar cover. You look different. A friend from Texas. Her blood turned to ice water. Only one person would phrase it that way, with that particular mix of possession and threat. Somehow, Nathaniel had got her number. She deleted the message without responding, but the damage was done. He knew where she was, what she was doing, how far she'd risen since leaving him. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it made her stand straighter. Let him watch. Let him see exactly what he'd lost when he chose cruelty over love. That evening, Diana had dinner with James Rivera, the photographer who'd shot her first real campaign. What had started as professional collaboration had evolved into something more personal. Late-night conversations about art and ambition, stolen kisses between takes, the kind of connection she'd forgotten was possible. You seem distracted tonight, James said, reaching across the table to touch her hand. They were at a small Italian restaurant in the village, far from the fashion world spotlight. Just thinking about the past, she admitted. How different everything is now. James studied her face with the same intensity he brought to his camera work. Good different or complicated different? Both. She turned her hand palm up, letting their fingers intertwine. With James, touch felt like choice instead of obligation, desire instead of duty. I'm testifying in my ex-husband's trial next week. She'd never told James the full story. The abuse, the fraud, the dramatic escape. He knew she'd been married before, that it had ended badly, but not the details that could destroy the carefully constructed life she'd built. That explains the tension in your shoulders all week, he said gently. Want to talk about it? The offer was genuine, without pressure or judgment. James had a way of creating safe spaces, whether behind a camera or across a dinner table. It was one of the things that had drawn her to him. He was controlling, made me feel like I was nothing without him. The trial is about financial crimes, but for me, it's about standing up and saying that how he treated me was wrong. James squeezed her hand. Sounds like he underestimated who he was dealing with. The simple statement of support nearly brought tears to her eyes. Well, had someone last believed in her strength without needing proof? They walked back to her apartment. She moved to a better place in Soho, still modest, but with actual furniture and windows that let in morning light. James had been there before, but tonight felt different, charged with the electricity that comes before important decisions. "Stay," she said at her door, the word carrying weight beyond a simple invitation. Inside, they moved together with the natural rhythm of two people who'd been circling each other for months, finally ready to stop pretending it was just friendship. James touched her like she was art worth studying, hands reverent and sure, taking time to worship rather than consume. "You're beautiful," he whispered against her neck, and she believed him because he never asked her to be anything other than herself. When they made love, it was with an intensity born of genuine desire rather than marital duty. Diana felt her body responding in ways she'd forgotten were possible, pleasure building not from performance, but from authentic connection. Afterward, lying in the darkness with James's arm around her waist, she felt something she'd never experienced in 10 years of marriage: complete safety and vulnerability. "Whatever happens in Houston," James said quietly, "you're not the same woman who left there. Remember that." She pressed closer to him, drawing strength from his certainty. "What if I fall apart on the witness stand? What if seeing him again makes me feel small? Then you remember that woman on the Harper's Bazaar cover. That woman who walked in my studio and commanded every eye in the room without saying a word. That woman didn't fall apart. She rose up. Have you ever realized you were stronger than you thought? Share your breakthrough moment." 3 days later, the call came that would change everything again. "Diana, this is Patricia Chun, Mr. Briggs's attorney." The voice was crisp, professional, dangerous. "We need to discuss your upcoming testimony." Diana's hand tightened on the phone. "I don't think we have anything to discuss." "Oh, but we do. You see, testifying means your new identity becomes public record. Diana Martinez, the model, will be revealed as Denise Briggs, the bitter ex-wife. Your career, your new life, your carefully constructed image, all of it will be connected to this scandal." The threat was clear without being explicit. "Testify and lose everything she'd built." "Are you trying to intimidate me?" Diana asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm trying to help you understand the consequences of your choices. You've built something beautiful here. Don't let the past destroy your future." The line went dead, leaving Diana staring at her reflection in the apartment window. Outside, New York pulsed with life and opportunity. Inside, the ghosts of Houston whispered warnings about the price of truth. But as she looked at the Harper's Bazaar cover propped on her dresser, her own face staring back with uncompromising strength, she realized something that made her smile. They were afraid of her. Not the broken woman who'd left Houston 18 months ago, but the powerful one who was planning to return. The contract was everything she dreamed of: face of the most prestigious fashion house in America, campaigns worth millions, her image in every major city worldwide. But signing it meant stepping into a spotlight bright enough for everyone to see, including the man who taught her to hide. She picked up her pen, signed her name with flourishes that looked like victory, and began planning her return to Texas. Let them be afraid. Let them try to silence her. The woman who'd once whispered apologies was done being quiet. Diana Martinez was about to remind the world why you should never underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Fame is a spotlight that illuminates not just who you've become, but who you used to be, and sometimes who's been searching for you. Diana Martinez stood 40 stories above Manhattan, watching her face smile down from a digital billboard that stretched across 3 buildings. The woman on that screen bore no resemblance to the scared girl who once counted bruises in a marble bathroom. This woman commanded attention instead of hiding from it. "You're everywhere," her assistant Marcus. Not her son, but another Marcus who'd become family in different ways, said as he handed her morning coffee. Times Square, Vogue, Instagram, trending. The campaign broke every record. She traced the rim of her cup, steam rising like incense to her success. 2 years of careful climbing had led to this moment. Her face representing the most prestigious fashion house in America. Every magazine cover, every runway show, every photograph had been a step away from the woman who once believed she was too much of everything wrong and not enough of anything right. The irony wasn't lost on her. Nathaniel had spent 10 years trying to make her invisible. Now millions of people couldn't look away. Her phone buzzed with interview requests, appearance offers, brand partnerships. Diana Martinez was having a moment that stretched into months of unrelenting visibility. Fashion Week had been a triumph. The Met Gala invitation sat framed in her apartment. Not because she was proud of the event, but because she was proud of the woman brave enough to attend it. "The photographer from yesterday's shoot wants to see you again," Marcus mentioned, scrolling through messages. Something about a personal project. Diana's reflection caught her eye in the floor-to-ceiling windows. At 38, she'd finally learned to see beauty when she looked at herself. The photographer, James, had spent 3 hours capturing her in natural light, calling her movement poetry in motion. When was the last time someone had spoken to her like art instead of object? Set it up, she decided. But somewhere private. Privacy had become precious currency. Paparazzi followed her to coffee shops, grocery stores, yoga classes. They want to know about her past, her family, her love life. She'd become expert at smiling while revealing nothing, at answering questions without actually answering them. The transformation hadn't been just physical, though her body had certainly changed. Good food, regular sleep, exercise born of joy instead of punishment. She discovered what happened when a woman took care of herself, because she wanted to, not because someone else demanded it. But the real change was deeper. She moved through the world, now, like she belonged in it. James arrived at her apartment that evening with wine and a proposition that had nothing to do with business. He was 42, divorced, kind in ways that still surprised her. When he touched her face to adjust lighting for a shot, she didn't flinch. When he complimented her intelligence during their conversations, she didn't deflect. "You photograph like someone who's never been seen before," he murmured as they moved from the camera to her couch. "Maybe I haven't been," she admitted, allowing his hands to map territory that hadn't been touched with genuine desire in years. Their intimacy unfolded slowly, carefully. She guided his exploration, setting boundaries that felt revolutionary. This was her body, her choice, her pleasure. No performance required, no criticism accepted. James worshipped her curves with the same attention he'd given her photographs, finding beauty in details others had called flaws. Later, as city lights painted patterns across her bedroom walls, she allowed herself to imagine this could be enough. A successful career, a kind lover, an apartment that felt like sanctuary instead of prison. She'd built a life where she mattered. The interview request came the next morning from America's most popular talk show. Her publicist was beside herself with excitement. "This is it, Diana. This is the conversation that makes you a household name forever." Diana stared at the formal invitation, understanding what acceptance meant. There would be questions about her past, her journey, her transformation. The interviewer was known for getting people to reveal more than they intended. Once she sat in that chair, under those lights, there would be no more hiding. "How deep will they dig?" she asked her publicist. "As deep as you let them." But Diana, honey, mystery only worked for so long. People want to know who you really are. Who is she, really? The question had haunted her for 2 years of rebuilding. She was Diana Martinez, successful model and emerging businesswoman. She was a woman who'd learned to love herself. She was someone who'd survived something terrible and created something beautiful from the wreckage. She was also Denise Briggs, who'd fled from a marriage that was slowly killing her soul. The contract arrived by messenger that afternoon. Face of the most prestigious fashion house in America, a deal that would secure her financial independence forever. But signing it meant stepping into a spotlight bright enough for everyone to see, including the man who'd taught her to hide. Her hands trembled as she read the terms. 3 years, exclusive representation, campaigns that would put her face on every billboard in America. It was everything she'd worked toward, everything she'd dreamed of during those early days in Brooklyn when she'd eaten ramen for weeks to afford headshots. But also meant Nathaniel would see her. Their son would see her. The life she'd left behind in Texas would collide with the life she'd built in New York. She thought about the woman in the marble bathroom, counting invisible bruises. That woman had been so afraid of being seen that she'd made herself disappear. This woman had spent 2 years learning that visibility was power. Diana picked up her pen and signed her name with steady hands. If Nathaniel was going to find her, let him find her at the top. The invitation arrived on cream-colored paper with gold lettering. New York Fashion Gala, Lifetime Achievement Awards. She didn't know that same invitation sat on Nathaniel's desk, or that fate was about to orchestrate the reunion she'd both dreaded and desired. They say you can't outrun your past, but what happens when your past can't recognize your future? Nathaniel Briggs stood in his Houston office, holding an invitation that felt heavier than the paper it was printed on. New York Fashion Gala, Lifetime Achievement Awards. His attendance was expected. His company still sponsored major fashion events, though business hadn't been the same since Denise left. He'd never stopped looking for her. Private investigators had turned up nothing for 18 years. Denise Briggs had vanished so completely it was as if she'd never existed. But lately, something nagged at him about the model everyone was talking about. Diana Martinez. Those eyes in the magazines looked familiar, though he couldn't place why. Meanwhile, in her Manhattan apartment, Diana stood before her closet holding 3 different gowns. Each represented a different version of herself. The woman she'd been, the woman she was becoming, the woman she might yet be. The red dress spoke of confidence, of someone who'd learned to command attention. The black one whispered of elegance, of someone who'd found her sophistication. The gold dress sang of triumph, of someone who'd transformed pain into power. Her phone rang. Marcus, her son Marcus, now 18 and studying at NYU, wanted to meet for lunch. I saw the billboard in Times Square, he said when they met at their usual cafe. Mom, you're incredible. She studied his face, searching for traces of his father. Marcus had Nathaniel's jaw, his intensity, but her kindness. He'd grown up asking questions about his dad that she'd answered carefully, honestly, but without bitterness. I've been thinking about him lately, Marcus admitted, stirring sugar into his coffee. About my father. Do you think I'll ever meet him? Diana's heart clenched. Her son knew the basics, that his father had been cruel, that leaving had been necessary for both their safety and sanity. But Marcus was 18 now, old enough to make his own decisions about relationships. Would you want to? She asked carefully. I don't know. Maybe. I keep wondering if he ever thinks about us, if he ever regrets what he did. That evening, Diana called James. Their relationship had deepened over the past month into something that felt dangerously close to love. He understood her need for independence, her carefully maintained boundaries around her past. I need to tell you something, she said as they shared wine on her terrace. My real name isn't Diana Martinez. James set down his glass, giving her his full attention. I changed it when I came to New York. I was running from someone who hurt me. My son's father. Are you in danger? Not anymore. But tomorrow night's gala, there's a chance he might be there. I haven't seen him in 18 years. James reached for her hand. Do you want me to come with you? She shook her head. This is something I need to face alone. That night, they made love with an intensity that surprised them both. Diana allowed herself to be completely present, to feel every touch, every kiss, every moment of pleasure. This was what intimacy could be when it was chosen freely, when it came from desire instead of obligation. In Houston, Nathaniel stood in his own bedroom, looking at photos of the son he'd never really known. Marcus had been 8 when Denise left. He'd be 26 now, no wait. 28? The math escaped him, another reminder of how completely he'd failed as a father. His business empire was cracking. Bad investments, worse partnerships, and a reputation for being difficult had cost him millions. The man who'd once controlled everything now struggled to control anything. He'd married twice more since Denise left. Both marriages had ended in expensive divorces when his new wives discovered what Denise had already known, that Nathaniel Briggs was a man who needed to diminish others to feel powerful. The therapy sessions his second wife had demanded had revealed uncomfortable truths. He treated Denise terribly not because she deserved it, but because her strength had threatened him. Her intelligence, her creativity, her natural warmth. All the things that had attracted him initially had become weapons he'd used against her once he realized he couldn't own them. But understanding and changing were different things. His third wife had left just 6 months earlier, citing the same patterns Denise had endured. The gala would be good for business, assuming he still had business worth promoting. His assistant had booked the hotel, arranged transportation, selected his tuxedo. He would go through the motions of being successful while quietly bleeding money and influence. Diana spent the morning of the gala at her favorite spa, letting professionals prepare her body for battle. Because that's what this felt like, preparation for war, even though she wasn't sure who the enemy was anymore. "You're glowing today," her esthetician commented. "Big plans," something like that. She'd chosen the gold dress. If Nathaniel was going to see her, let him see her golden, triumphant, everything he'd tried to convince her she wasn't. James texted throughout the day. Supportive messages, reminders that she was stronger than whatever she might face, promises to be available if she needed him. Her publicist called with final details. "Every major photographer will be there. This is your moment, Diana. Own it." As afternoon became evening, Diana began her transformation. Hair swept into an elegant updo that showcased her long neck. Makeup that enhanced rather than hid. Jewelry that caught light and threw it back like armor. She looked in the mirror and saw a woman who could handle anything. The scared girl who'd once hidden in bathrooms was gone, replaced by someone who walked into rooms like she owned them. Her car was waiting. The driver held the door open, and Diana Martinez stepped into the New York night, not knowing that across the city, Nathaniel Briggs was doing the same. As her car pulled up to the gala entrance, photographers went wild. But inside, a man was about to have his world destroyed by the woman he'd taught to be invisible. The moment she stepped onto that runway, 18 years of silence exploded into a roar that shook the foundation of everything he thought he knew. The Metropolitan Museum was transformed into fashion's holiest ground. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow light across marble floors where models, designers, celebrities, and industry titans mingled in carefully choreographed elegance. Cameras flashed like lightning, capturing moments that would define careers and destroy others. Nathaniel arrived fashionably late, as was his custom. At 55, he still carried himself like the powerful man he'd once been, though his empire was crumbling behind designer suits and practiced confidence. He worked the room methodically, shaking hands, making small talk, pretending his company wasn't hemorrhaging money. Briggs, Harold Morrison, an old business associate, clapped him on the shoulder. "Did you see who's presenting tonight? That Martinez woman everyone's going crazy about. Stunning creature." Nathaniel nodded politely, only half listening. His attention was focused on staying relevant in conversations about deals that no longer included him. The lights dimmed as the program began. Awards were presented, speeches given, polite applause offered. Then the announcer's voice cut through the murmur. "Ladies and gentlemen, presenting this year's Breakthrough Achievement Award, Diana Martinez." Spotlights blazed as the curtains parted. A woman emerged who made the entire room fall silent. Not just because of her beauty, though she was breathtaking in gold that seemed to flow like liquid metal across her curves. Not just because of her presence, though she commanded the space like she'd been born to it. The room fell silent because Diana Martinez walked like a queen returning to reclaim her throne. Nathaniel's champagne glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Ice ran through his veins as recognition hit him like a physical blow. Denise. But not the Denise he remembered. That woman had been diminished, made small by his constant criticism. This woman filled the space around her with confidence that radiated like heat. Her hair was shorter, styled in elegant waves that framed a face that had learned to be beautiful instead of apologetic. Her body moved with grace he'd forgotten she possessed. She reached the podium and smiled at the audience, a smile that didn't ask for permission or approval. When she spoke, her voice carried across the room with authority that made his chest tighten with something between panic and desire. "Thank you for this honor," she began, her eyes sweeping across the crowd. "This award represents more than professional achievement. It represents the transformation that happens when a woman stops accepting less than she's worth." The audience erupted in applause. Nathaniel stood frozen, watching his ex-wife, his disappeared wife, command the attention of New York's most powerful people. "I spent years believing I was too much of everything wrong and not enough of anything right," Diana continued, her voice growing stronger. "I thought success meant making myself smaller, quieter, more convenient for others." Her eyes found his across the crowded room. For a moment that stretched into eternity, they stared at each other. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between them. Recognition, challenge, triumph. "But I learned something important," she said, her gaze never leaving his. "The most powerful thing a woman can do is refuse to stay invisible. Refuse to accept crumbs when she deserves the feast." The crowd was on their feet now, cheering words that felt like bullets aimed directly at his heart. Cameras captured every moment, every expression, every second of her triumph. Social media exploded instantly. Hashtag Diana Martinez began trending worldwide within minutes. Fashion bloggers live tweeted her speech. Instagram stories multiplied like wildfire. The woman who'd vanished without a trace was suddenly everywhere at once. Nathaniel pushed through the crowd, desperate to reach her, but security kept the masses at bay as Diana was swept into a sea of congratulations and interview requests. He caught glimpses of her through the crowd, laughing with Anna Wintour, posing for photos with other models, accepting business cards from people who would have ignored her when she was his wife. "Excuse me," he told a security guard. "I need to speak with Ms. Martinez." "It's urgent." "Sir, Ms. Martinez isn't taking meetings tonight. Tell her Nathaniel Briggs needs to speak with her. She'll understand." The guard spoke into his earpiece, listened to the response, then looked at Nathaniel with barely concealed surprise. "She says to give you this." A piece of paper was pressed into his hand. Hotel stationery with elegant handwriting. Room 2847. 1 hour. Come alone. The next 60 minutes were the longest of Nathaniel's life. He left the gala, ignoring business associates who tried to engage him in conversation. His mind raced with questions, explanations, desperate hopes he didn't dare acknowledge. She'd been here all along, in New York, building a career that made his accomplishments look small. While he'd hired investigators to search for a woman who'd disappeared, she'd been hiding in plain sight, becoming famous enough that millions of people knew her face. The elevator ride to the 28th floor felt like ascending to Judgment Day. His reflection in the polished doors showed a man who looked older than his years, worn down by failures he'd brought on himself. He knocked on the door to 2847. When it opened, Diana stood there in a hotel robe, her makeup removed, her hair down. Without the armor of cameras and crowds, she looked more like the woman he remembered, but stronger, more centered, more certain of her place in the world. "Hello, Nathaniel." Her voice was calm, controlled. She stepped aside to let him enter a suite that probably cost more than most people made in a month. "Denise," he breathed. "Diana," she corrected firmly. "Denise was your wife. Diana is the woman who left you." As she left the stage to thunderous applause, a note was pressed in her hand. "We need to talk." And she looked back to see him standing there, no longer the man who controlled her, but one who was clearly broken. Some conversations are worth waiting 18 years for, not because time heals wounds, but because it teaches you which ones to keep open. Diana moved to the windows overlooking Central Park, the city lights creating a backdrop for the most important conversation of her adult life. Nathaniel stood by the door, as if afraid to come further into her space without permission. "You look," he started, then stopped, running his hands through hair that had gone silver at the temples. "Different," she suggested, turning to face him. "Successful? Happy? Everything you said I'd never be." The words hit him like physical blows. He deserved them, and they both knew it. "I never stopped looking for you," he said quietly. 18 years of private investigators, internet searches, missing person reports. "Where were you?" "I was right here," Diana replied, settling into an armchair that positioned her higher than the couch where he'd taken hesitant residence. "Hiding in plain sight. Building the life you convinced me I wasn't capable of having." Nathaniel's eyes swept over her. The confident posture, the elegant features that had learned to be beautiful instead of apologetic, the success that radiated from every gesture. "You were always capable. I was just too threatened to admit it." "Threatened?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "By what? My ambitions? My dreams? My refusal to pretend I was less intelligent than you?" "By everything about you." The admission came out raw, unpolished. "You were smarter than me, more creative, more naturally charming. People liked you better. I spent 10 years trying to convince you that you were lucky I chose you, when the truth was I couldn't believe someone like you had chosen me." Diana studied his face, searching for lies, for manipulation, for the calculated cruelty she remembered. Instead, she saw exhaustion, genuine regret, and something that might have been grief. "So you decided to destroy what you couldn't control," she said. "Yes. No excuses, no justifications. I turned your strengths into weapons against you. Made you doubt everything good about yourself because your confidence threatened mine." The silence stretched between them, filled with 18 years of unanswered questions and unspoken pain. "I married 2 more women after you left," Nathaniel continued. "Both divorces. Both cited the same reasons you would have, if you'd bothered with divorce papers." "Why would I need papers to leave a marriage that was killing me?" He flinched. "Is that what it was doing? You made me disappear piece by piece until I barely existed in my own life." "Yes, Nathaniel. It was killing me." Diana rose, moving to the bar to pour herself wine. Her movements were fluid, confident, nothing like the nervous woman who'd once jumped at his criticism. "Tell me about our son," Nathaniel said suddenly. Her hand stilled on the wine bottle. "What about him? Does he know about me? He knows he has a father who wasn't capable of being a parent. He knows I left to protect us both." She turned to face him. "He's 18 now, a freshman at NYU, studying business and photography. He's kind, intelligent, creative. Everything good about both of us without any of your cruelty. Does he hate me?" Diana considered the question carefully. "He's curious about you. But hate requires caring enough to feel strongly. Mostly, you're just an absence in his life." The words landed harder than anger would have. Nathaniel had spent years imagining his son's hatred, but indifference was somehow worse. "I've been in therapy," he said, "since my second divorce, learning about patterns, narcissistic behavior, emotional manipulation, all the clinical terms for what I did to you. Good for you. I want to make amends." "To who?" "The woman who doesn't exist anymore." Diana returned to her chair, wine in hand. "I'm not the same person you married, Nathaniel. I'm not even the same person who left you. Denise was a victim. Diana is a survivor who became a success. You can't make amends to someone who's moved beyond needing them." But even as she said it, Diana felt something stirring in her chest. Not forgiveness. That would take more than one conversation. But curiosity about whether people could truly change, whether 18 years of growth applied to both of them. "You're right," he said. "But I'd like to try making amends to the woman you are now." "Why?" The question hung in the air between them. Why indeed? What did he want from this conversation? From this woman who'd built a life that didn't include him? Nathaniel moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, different from what he'd worn during their marriage, but still expensive, still him. "Because seeing you tonight, seeing what you've become, I realized I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because you left, but because I drove you away." Diana felt her pulse quicken as he approached. 18 years hadn't diminished the physical chemistry that had first drawn them together. His presence still affected her, still made her aware of her body in ways that felt dangerous. "You can't have me back," she said firmly. "I know." He stopped just close enough that they could touch if either reached out. "But maybe we could figure out how to be different people together. People who deserve each other instead of people who destroy each other." The kiss happened before either planned it. 18 years of unfinished business, of questions unanswered, of chemistry that had survived abuse and abandonment. His lips were familiar, but different, gentler than she remembered, asking instead of demanding. Diana allowed it for a moment, allowed herself to feel the pull of history, the temptation of redemption stories and second chances. Then she pulled away, her hand on his chest to maintain distance. "I don't trust you," she said simply. "You shouldn't," he agreed. "But I'd like the chance to earn it." She walked toward the door, then turned back with words that would haunt him. "There's someone you need to meet. Our son wants to see the man who taught his mother to disappear." Marcus had grown up with questions about his father. Tonight, he would finally get answers that would change how he saw everything. The restaurant Diana chose was neutral territory. Upscale enough to honor the moment's importance, casual enough that her son wouldn't feel ambushed. She arrived first, claiming a corner table where they could talk without being overheard, though her fame made true privacy impossible. Diners recognized her. Phones appeared, but she'd learned to exist gracefully under constant observation. Marcus walked in at exactly 7 o'clock, punctual like his father, though he didn't know that yet. At 18, he stood 6'2" with Diana's warm eyes and Nathaniel's strong jaw. He'd grown into the kind of young man who attracted attention without seeking it, confident but not cocky, intelligent but not condescending. "You look nervous," he observed, kissing Diana's cheek before sitting across from her. "I feel nervous," she admitted. "What I'm about to tell you might change how you see me, how you see yourself, how you see our family." Marcus straightened, his expression becoming more serious. "Mom, whatever it is, your father is here. In New York. He wants to meet you." The words hung between them like a bridge Marcus could choose to cross or burn. His face cycled through emotions, surprise, curiosity, anger, fear. "Here? How?" Diana explained the gala, the recognition, the hotel room conversation. She watched her son process information that shifted his understanding of his own story. "All these years, you told me he didn't want us," Marcus said carefully. "That was true then. Whether it's true now, that's what we need to find out." The restaurant door opened, and Diana felt the shift in energy that announced Nathaniel's presence. He dressed carefully, expensive but not flashy, successful but not intimidating. When he spotted them, his steps faltered for just a moment before he approached their table. Marcus turned to see what had captured his mother's attention, and Diana watched her son meet his father for the first time in a decade. The family resemblance was unmistakable. Same bone structure, same height, same way of holding their shoulders when concentrating. But where Nathaniel carried the weight of his failures, Marcus radiated the confidence of someone who'd been raised to believe in his own worth. "Marcus," Nathaniel said, his voice rough with emotion. You look incredible." Marcus studied the man who'd contributed half his DNA and none of his upbringing. "You look older than I expected." Diana hid her smile behind her water glass. Her son had inherited her diplomacy along with her directness. Nathaniel sat down slowly, as if afraid sudden movements might break whatever fragile connection was being offered. "I deserve that. I deserve worse than that." "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "You probably do." The waiter approached, took drink orders, disappeared quickly. The three of them sat in silence that felt heavy with 18 years of absence. "I have questions," Marcus finally said. "Ask them. Did you love her?" Marcus nodded toward Diana. "When you married her, did you actually love her?" Nathaniel's eyes moved between his son and his ex-wife. "Yes, but I didn't know how to love someone without trying to own them." "That's not love," Marcus said flatly. "That's possession." "You're right. Why did you let us go?" The question came out younger than Marcus's usual confident tone. If you loved us, why didn't you fight for us? Diana watched Nathaniel struggle with the answer, watched him decide between comfortable lies and difficult truths. Because fighting would have meant admitting I was wrong, Nathaniel said finally. And I was too proud to be wrong, too proud to change, too proud to acknowledge that your mother was strong enough to survive without me. Marcus leaned back in his chair, processing. Mom says you were cruel to her. I was. Why? Because she was everything I wanted to be and was afraid I wasn't. Smart, creative, naturally likable. Instead of letting her make me better, I tried to tear her down to my level. Diana found herself studying Nathaniel as he spoke. This version of him, humble, honest, genuinely remorseful, was foreign to her experience. The man she'd married would never have admitted weakness, would never have credited her strengths. What do you want from me? Marcus asked. From us. I want to know who you've become. I want to understand what I missed. Nathaniel paused, choosing words carefully. I want the chance to be proud of you, if you'll let me. You don't get to be proud of someone else's work, Marcus said, his voice sharp with anger Diana rarely heard from him. Mom raised me alone while you were living your life like we never existed. She worked 3 jobs so I could take our classes. She taught me to respect women by being someone worth respecting. She showed me what strength looked like by rebuilding her entire life from nothing. Each word hit Nathaniel like a physical blow, but he didn't defend himself, didn't make excuses. You're right, he said simply. I know I'm right. Marcus's anger was building now, 18 years of questions finding their target. Do you know what it's like growing up without a father? Having to explain to other kids why there's no dad at school events? Watching Mom cry when she thought I wasn't looking because she was trying to be both parents? Marcus, Diana started, but her son wasn't finished. She became successful despite you, not because of you. She built an empire while you were getting married to other women, running your own business into the ground. The accuracy of the assessment made Nathaniel flinch. How did you? I researched you, Marcus said matter-of-factly. When I turned 16, I looked up Nathaniel Briggs, oil executive from Houston. Found the business articles, the divorce records, the financial troubles. You want to know the truth? I felt sorry for you. Marcus stood to leave, but paused. Mom became successful despite you, not because of you. If you want a relationship with me, prove you understand the difference. The ultimatum hung in the air like a challenge neither parent expected. Redemption isn't given, it's earned, one small act of genuine change at a time. Nathaniel's empire was crumbling in real time, and for once, he was watching it happen with something approaching relief. The Houston Chronicle ran the story 3 weeks after the gala. Oil executives passed under scrutiny as ex-wife's success story goes viral. Social media had done what private investigators couldn't, connected Diana Martinez to Denise Briggs, and the internet was having opinions about the reunion. His phone rang constantly with reporters wanting statements, business partners asking uncomfortable questions, board members scheduling emergency meetings. But Nathaniel found himself caring less about his professional reputation and more about a text message he'd received that morning. Coffee? Marcus. Diana's career had reached stratospheric heights since the gala. 3 magazine covers in 2 weeks, a cosmetics contract worth 8 figures, and a book deal for her autobiography. The woman he'd once convinced she was worthless was proving her worth on a global scale. He met Marcus at a small cafe in Soho, far from the business district where Nathaniel's problems were front-page news. His son arrived early, already nursing coffee and reading something on his laptop. Thank you for agreeing to see me, Nathaniel said, sliding into the seat across from him. Marcus looked up, and Nathaniel was struck again by how much the young man resembled him physically while radiating the confidence Diana had possessed before he'd systematically destroyed it. I've been thinking about what you said, Marcus replied, about wanting to be proud of me. And I realized I want to understand something. When you were married to Mom, did you know you were hurting her? Or did you convince yourself you were helping? The question cut deeper than accusations. Nathaniel had spent months in therapy exploring exactly this distinction. Both, he answered honestly. I knew she was unhappy, but I told myself it was because she wasn't trying hard enough to be better. I convinced myself that my criticism was constructive, that I was pushing her to reach her potential, even though she was already amazing, especially because she was already amazing. Her competence threatened my sense of control. Marcus nodded, as if filing away information for later analysis. Mom says you're in therapy now, twice a week for 3 years. It's illuminating and humbling. What have you learned? Nathaniel considered how to explain years of uncomfortable self-discovery to a teenager. That I was raised by people who confused love with control. That I married your mother because she was everything I wanted to be, then spent 10 years punishing her for it. That I lost my family because I was more afraid of being vulnerable than I was committed to being worthy of love. Marcus's expression softened slightly. That's a lot of self-awareness for someone Mom described as completely self-absorbed. Your mother was right about me. About everything. They sat in comfortable silence, watching New York flow past the windows. Nathaniel found himself studying his son's profile, cataloging similarities and differences, wondering what kind of man Marcus was becoming. I saw the news about your company, Marcus said eventually. It's not good, Nathaniel admitted. Turns out, when you build a business on being ruthless, people aren't particularly loyal when times get tough. Are you going to lose everything? The question held no judgment, only curiosity. Probably. The irony isn't lost on me. Your mother is becoming more successful every day, while I'm losing everything I thought defined me. Marcus closed his laptop and leaned forward. Can I tell you something? About Mom? Please. She's been following your career for years. Not obsessively, but she knew about your marriages, your business troubles, your pattern of behavior. She never talked about it with me, but I could tell she felt sorry for you. Nathaniel's chest tightened. Sorry for me? She said once that hurt people. That you probably learned those behaviors from someone who hurt you first. The accuracy of that observation hit Nathaniel like a physical blow. His own father had been emotionally distant, his mother critical and demanding. He'd sworn he'd be different, then recreated the same dynamics in his own marriage. She's more generous than I deserve, he said quietly. Yes, she is. Which is why I'm going to tell you something that might surprise you. Nathaniel waited, unsure he wanted to hear whatever revelation was coming. She still loves you. The words hung in the air between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Marcus. Not the way she did when she was married to you. Not in a way that would make her compromise herself again. But she loves who you could have been, who you might still become if you do the work. Nathaniel felt something crack open in his chest, hope mixed with terror. How do you know that? Because when she talks about you, even when she's explaining why she had to leave, there's sadness in her voice. Not fear, not anger. Sadness for what was wasted. That evening, Nathaniel made a decision that would cost him everything he thought he wanted and give him a chance at everything he actually needed. The press conference was small, held at his lawyer's office rather than the corporate headquarters he was about to lose. Only a few reporters attended, but he knew the video would spread. I'm here to address recent speculation about my past marriage and to take full responsibility for my behavior, he began, reading from notes his publicist had begged him not to use. 18 years ago, my wife Denise left me and took our son. She didn't leave because she was unstable or vindictive, as some have suggested. She left because I was emotionally abusive. I systematically undermined her confidence, criticized her dreams, and made her feel worthless. The reporters leaned forward, sensing bigger news than they'd expected. The woman the world knows as Diana Martinez is one of the strongest, most intelligent, most talented people I've ever met. Her success isn't surprising to anyone who actually knew her. What's surprising is that she survived being married to me long enough to discover her own worth. He looked directly into the camera, speaking to an audience of one. Denise, if you're watching this, Diana, I'm sorry. Not for losing you, because you were never mine to lose. I'm sorry for trying to own something that was meant to soar. I'm sorry for teaching our son that love looks like control. I'm sorry for wasting 10 years of your life and 18 years of his. The business fallout was immediate and devastating. His remaining board members called an emergency meeting. Investors pulled funding. Contracts were terminated. By the end of the week, Nathaniel Briggs was no longer CEO of the company he'd built. But Marcus called that night. "I saw the press conference," his son said without preamble. "And it was the first time you sounded like someone I might want to know." 3 months later, Diana found herself in an impossible position. Nathaniel's public confession had destroyed what remained of his business empire, but had also begun something unprecedented in her experience with him: genuine accountability. He'd been attending therapy consistently, volunteering at a women's shelter, learning to use his remaining wealth to repair damage instead of accumulating more. Most surprisingly, he'd been showing up for Marcus without trying to buy his affection or compete with Diana's influence. "He's different," Marcus told her over lunch. "I mean, he's still arrogant sometimes, still thinks his opinions matter more than they should. But he listens now, and he asks questions about my life without making it about him." Diana felt the familiar tug of war between her protective instincts and her growing curiosity about whether people could truly change. "He asked me to give this to you," Marcus said, sliding an envelope across the table. Inside was a single sheet of paper with an address and a time. Nothing else. That Saturday, Diana found herself standing outside a women's shelter in Brooklyn, watching through the window as Nathaniel served lunch to women who looked like she had 18 years ago, tired, scared, trying to rebuild their lives from nothing. He looked up and saw her watching, his face cycling through surprise, hope, and something that might have been fear. He said something to the woman beside him, washed his hands, and came outside. "You came," he said simply. "Marcus said you volunteer here 3 days a week. The director says I'm surprisingly good at listening without trying to fix everything." They stood in awkward silence, watching the city move around them. "I'm not the same woman who left you," Diana said finally. "I know, and I'm not the same man you left. Maybe that's enough to start with." The headline read, "Billionaire's empire collapses as racist past exposed." But Diana's response would surprise everyone, including herself. Some falls are worth catching someone from. She could have watched him fall and called it justice. Instead, she did something that redefined both revenge and mercy. The boardroom where Diana Martinez commanded her latest business meeting would have intimidated the woman she'd once been. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, and the table was surrounded by some of fashion's most powerful executives, all hanging on her every word. "The Diana Martinez Foundation will focus on 3 areas," she explained to the assembled group: economic empowerment for women leaving abusive relationships, educational scholarships for their children, and business mentorship for female entrepreneurs. Her assistant handed out folders containing the foundation's business plan, a document that represented months of strategic thinking and careful planning. Diana had learned that success wasn't just about personal achievement. It was about using that achievement to lift others. "The initial funding will be substantial," she continued, "but we're looking for partners who understand that this isn't charity. This is investment in human potential." After the meeting, Diana's publicist approached with news that made her stomach clench. Nathaniel's company officially filed for bankruptcy this morning. The lawyers are saying he'll lose everything: house, cars, investments. There's even talk of personal bankruptcy. Diana stared out at the city she'd conquered, thinking about the man who'd once told her she'd never amount to anything, watching his own empire crumble. "Set up a meeting," she said quietly. "With Nathaniel?" "Diana, the optics." "I don't care about optics. Set it up." They met at a small restaurant in Queens, far from the media circus that followed both their lives now. Nathaniel arrived first, looking older than his 55 years. The expensive suits had been replaced with off-the-rack clothing that didn't quite fit his frame. His confidence had been stripped away, leaving behind someone Diana barely recognized. "You look tired," she observed, sliding into the booth across from him. "I'm tired." His honesty was jarring after years of his calculated responses. "Tired of fighting battles I created. Tired of defending positions I never should have taken." "I heard about the bankruptcy." Nathaniel nodded, staring at his untouched coffee. "Everything's gone. The house, the business, most of my investments. My lawyer says I'll be lucky to keep enough to rent a small apartment." Diana studied his face, searching for signs of the manipulation she remembered. Instead, she saw something that looked like acceptance. "Are you here to gloat?" he asked without bitterness. "No," she said honestly. "I'm here to make you an offer." Nathaniel looked up, surprise replacing resignation. "My foundation needs someone who understands business, who knows how to navigate corporate environments, who can help build something meaningful." "Diana, the salary would be modest. You'd be working for me, taking direction from me, building something designed to help women like the one I used to be." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. The woman he'd once controlled was now in position to control his future. "Why would you do this?" he asked. Diana considered the question carefully. "Because Marcus deserves a father who's building something instead of destroying it. Because I've learned that holding grudges gives people power over your future. And because I believe you might finally be ready to do better." What would I be doing? Corporate outreach, grant writing, strategic planning, using your business connections. The ones who haven't abandoned you, to build partnerships. Nathaniel was quiet for a long time, processing an offer that would save him from financial ruin while placing him completely under the authority of the woman he'd once diminished. "There would be conditions," Diana continued. "You continue therapy. You follow my leadership without question. You never, ever speak to our program participants the way you once spoke to me. And if I mess up, then you're gone, and this time there won't be a second chance." That night, Diana met James at her apartment. Their relationship had deepened over the months into something that felt like partnership. Two successful adults who enhanced rather than competed with each other. "You offered him a job?" James asked, processing the day's events over wine and takeout. "I offered him a chance to contribute instead of just consume. And if he takes it..." Diana curled against him on the couch, enjoying the simple pleasure of being held by someone who asked for nothing but her presence. "Then we'll see if people really can change, or if I'm setting myself up for disappointment." James kissed the top of her head. "You know what I love about you?" "What?" "You're strong enough to risk being disappointed because the alternative is cynicism." 3 days later, Nathaniel called to accept the position. His first day at the foundation was awkward for everyone involved. Staff members who knew Diana's story watched him with suspicion. He seemed uncomfortable taking direction from the woman he'd once ordered around. But he showed up on time, followed instructions without argument, and kept his opinions to himself unless asked. "How's it going?" Marcus asked Diana after Nathaniel's first week. "Strange," she admitted. "He's actually good at the work. Knows how to talk to corporate donors, understands legal structures, has connections we need. But I keep waiting for him to slip back into old patterns, to start criticizing my decisions or undermining my authority." "And has he?" "No. If anything, he's been almost deferential. It's unsettling." Marcus laughed. "Maybe that's what growth looks like. Maybe he's finally learning to respect your judgment instead of questioning it." The breakthrough came during their third week working together. They were preparing for a major donor presentation when Nathaniel made a suggestion that would have completely changed Diana's approach. "That's not the direction we're going," she said firmly, expecting the argument that would have inevitably followed during their marriage. Instead, Nathaniel nodded. "You're right. Your vision is clearer than mine on this." The simplicity of his acceptance caught her off guard. No defensiveness, no attempts to prove his idea was better, no subtle undermining of her authority. "That's it?" she asked. "That's it. You're the boss. I'm here to support your vision, not impose my own." For the first time in months, Diana felt something that might have been trust beginning to grow. Their presentation was a success, securing funding that would help dozens of women rebuild their lives. As they walked out of the donor's office, Diana realized they'd just functioned as a team for the first time in their relationship. "Good work today," she told him. "Thank you," he replied, "for the opportunity to do good work." That evening, alone in her apartment, Diana allowed herself to wonder if this might actually work. Not reconciliation, not romance, but partnership built on respect instead of power. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. "Diana." The voice was shaky, uncertain. "This is going to sound crazy, but I think I'm pregnant." 20 years ago, she left carrying one child and a broken heart. Now she was staying, carrying new life and unbreakable strength. Diana stared at the pregnancy test in her bathroom, the same bathroom where she'd once stood examining invisible bruises. 2 lines, clear as the morning light streaming through windows of an apartment she owned, in a life she'd built with a man who saw her worth. James was in London on a photography assignment. She'd called him immediately, watching his face transform through the phone screen from surprise to joy to something deeper, a quiet certainty that they could handle whatever came next. "Are you happy?" he'd asked. "I'm terrified," she'd admitted. "But yes, I'm happy." At 40, Diana had never imagined she'd be pregnant again. Marcus was 22 now, graduated from NYU, and working as a photographer like his stepfather-to-be. Her body had changed. Her life had settled into patterns she loved. The idea of disrupting that stability with an infant felt both thrilling and overwhelming. But more complicated than her own feelings was the conversation she needed to have with Nathaniel. They'd been working together for 8 months now, and the foundation was thriving. He'd proven himself reliable, deferential to her leadership, genuinely committed to the work. Their professional relationship had settled into something that felt almost comfortable. Two people who'd learned to respect each other's strengths without forgetting their history. "I need to tell you something," she said as they reviewed grant applications in her office. Nathaniel looked up from the paperwork, immediately alert to the serious tone in her voice. "I'm pregnant." The words hung between them like a bridge neither expected to cross. Nathaniel's face cycled through emotions, surprise, something that might have been pain, and finally, what looked like genuine happiness. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "James must be over the moon." "He is." Diana searched Nathaniel's expression for signs of jealousy or possessiveness. Instead, she found something she'd never seen from him before: pure, unselfish joy for her happiness. "You'll be an amazing mother," he continued. "You already are." "This doesn't change anything here," she said, gesturing to the office around them. "I'll work through the pregnancy, take maternity leave when the baby comes, continue running the foundation." "Of course." Nathaniel's response was immediate, unquestioning. "Whatever you need, however I can support that." Diana felt something shift inside her chest, a recognition that the man sitting across from her bore little resemblance to the one who'd once demanded she choose between motherhood and personal ambitions. "Actually," she said slowly, "there is something I need. Anything. Marcus wants to plan a family dinner. All of us together. You, me, James, him. He says it's time we figured out how to be a functional blended family." Nathaniel was quiet for a moment, processing the invitation and all implied. "Are you sure that's what you want?" he asked. "I'm sure it's what's best for everyone involved. We're going to be connected for the rest of our lives through Marcus, and now through this baby too, indirectly. We might as well figure out how to do it well." The dinner was scheduled for the following Saturday at Diana's apartment. She spent the week alternating between confidence and panic, unsure how the 4 most important relationships in her life would blend together in one room. James returned from London 2 days before the dinner, and Diana fell into his arms with relief she hadn't expected to feel. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his hands moving instinctively to her still flat stomach. "Like I'm about to host the world's most complicated dinner party." "It'll be fine," James assured her, though she could see his own nervousness about meeting the man who'd hurt the woman he loved. Marcus arrived early to help with preparations, moving through Diana's kitchen with the easy confidence of someone who'd grown up helping his mother navigate difficult situations. "You sure about this?" he asked as they arranged flowers. "No," Diana admitted, "but some things are worth doing even when you're not sure." "He's different, you know," Marcus said. "Dad, I mean, the last few months of getting to know him, he's not the same person you described from your marriage." "People don't change that dramatically." "Maybe they don't change," Marcus suggested. "Maybe they just finally become who they always could have been." Nathaniel arrived precisely on time, carrying wine and flowers, looking nervous in a way Diana had rarely seen from him. James answered the door, and she watched from the kitchen as the 2 men who'd loved her shook hands, one meeting the other for the first time, both understanding the other's significance in her life. "James," Nathaniel said simply, "thank you for making her happy. Thank you for letting her go," James replied, and Diana felt her heart clench at the grace both men were showing. Dinner unfolded more easily than anyone expected. Nathaniel asked thoughtful questions about James's work, shared stories about the foundation that highlighted Diana's leadership, and listened to Marcus talk about his photography projects with genuine interest. "I have an announcement," Diana said, as they finished dessert. 3 pairs of eyes focused on her expectantly. "James and I are getting married." The room erupted in congratulations, hugs, tears of joy. But it was Nathaniel's reaction that surprised her most. He stood and embraced her with the careful affection of someone who'd learned the difference between love and possession. "I'm happy for you," he whispered in her ear. "You deserve everything good." Later, as they cleaned dishes together, all 4 of them moving around her kitchen like a family that had figured out how to function, Diana caught sight of them reflected in the window. This strange collection of people who'd hurt each other, forgiven each other, and chosen to build something better together. "Mom!" Marcus appeared at her elbow. "You okay?" Diana touched her stomach, thinking about the life growing there. A child who would be born into a family that had learned to love without conditions, support without control, and grow without shrinking others. "Yeah," she said, watching Nathaniel laugh at something James had said. "I think we're all okay." As they cut the ribbon on their new foundation for abused women, Diana whispered to Nathaniel, "Our daughter will never know what it feels like to shrink herself for anyone." His tears were the final proof of his transformation. She built an empire not to replace the one she left, but to create something entirely new, a world where women like her never had to disappear to find themselves. The Diana Martinez Foundation's annual gala had become the most sought-after invitation in New York's social calendar. Not because of the celebrities who attended or the expensive venue, but because of the stories shared on stage. Women who'd rebuilt their lives from nothing, children who'd broken cycles of abuse, families who'd learned that love didn't require control. Diana stood at the podium in a custom gown that celebrated her 6 months pregnant figure instead of hiding it. At 41, she'd never felt more powerful, more certain of her place in the world, or more grateful for the journey that had brought her here. 5 years ago, she began, her voice carrying easily across the ballroom. This foundation started with a simple belief that every woman deserves the chance to discover her own worth, regardless of who has tried to convince her otherwise. In the audience, she could see the faces that mattered most. James sat at the head table, his eyes bright with pride and love. Marcus, now 23 and the Foundation's official photographer, captured moments between the tables. And Nathaniel, dressed in a simple black tuxedo that reflected his new understanding of appropriate attention, listened from the back of the room, where he preferred to work rather than be seen. "We've helped over 2,000 women leave dangerous situations," Diana continued. "Provided scholarships for their children, funded business ventures, created support networks that last long after our formal programs end." The applause was thunderous, but Diana wasn't finished. "But the real measure of our success isn't in numbers. It's in the transformations we've witnessed. Women who entered our programs believing they were worthless, discovering they were priceless. Children who thought dysfunction was normal, learning what healthy relationships look like." She paused, her hand moving instinctively to her rounded stomach. "Tonight, I want to share something personal. The baby I'm carrying will be born into a world very different from the one I knew 23 years ago when I first became a mother. She'll grow up seeing women in leadership positions, understanding that her voice matters, knowing that love should never require her to become smaller." The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. But more importantly, she'll grow up seeing what's possible when people choose growth over grudges, when they choose to build bridges instead of walls. Diana's eyes found Nathaniel in the crowd. He was crying quietly, understanding the forgiveness embedded in her words. "This foundation exists because I learned that the most powerful response to being diminished isn't to diminish others in return. It's to become so bright that you light the way for others to find their own strength. The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. Later, at the after-party in her apartment, the strange family she'd assembled gathered to celebrate not just the foundation's success, but the life they'd all learned to live together. Speech was perfect, Marcus told her, kissing her cheek as he prepared to leave. Dad was crying in the back. Which dad? Diana asked with a smile. Both of them, actually. James gets emotional at these events, and Nathaniel, well, I think he's still processing how much he almost threw away. After the guests left, Diana found herself alone with James and Nathaniel on her terrace, overlooking the city she'd conquered. The numbers tonight were incredible, Nathaniel reported, falling easily into his role as the foundation's operations director. We raised enough to expand into 3 new cities, fund the scholarship program through next year, and launch the business incubator program. Good work, Diana replied, then added something she'd never thought she'd say to him. I'm proud of what we've built together. Nathaniel's face showed surprise, then gratitude. Thank you for letting me be part of something meaningful. James wrapped his arms around Diana from behind, his hands settling on her pregnant belly. Have I mentioned lately that I'm madly in love with you? Only about 50 times today, she laughed, leaning back in his warmth. Well, here's 51. I'm madly in love with you. As Nathaniel gathered his things to leave, he paused at the door. Diana, can I say something? She nodded. Watching you tonight, seeing what you've accomplished, understanding the woman you've become, I realize that my greatest achievement isn't anything I built in business. It's that I was married to you long enough to witness your strength, even if I was too stupid to appreciate it then. After he left, Diana and James settled into their bedroom, talking quietly about the future they were building together. Do you ever regret it? James asked, giving him a second chance to be part of your life. Diana considered the question carefully. I don't think of it as giving him a second chance. I think of it as refusing to let his past behavior limit my future choices. Working with him, letting him be part of our extended family, that's not about him. That's about me choosing to live without bitterness. And Marcus? Marcus deserves a father who's learned how to be one. Whatever Nathaniel was 20 years ago, he's become someone our son can respect. That's worth something. James was quiet for a moment, his hand tracing patterns on her skin. You know what's incredible? What? Your revenge was becoming everything he said you weren't. But your victory was becoming someone who could forgive him anyway. 3 months later, their daughter arrived. 8 pounds, 2 ounces of pure potential. They named her Grace, and Diana knew the moment she held her that this child would grow up understanding her worth was non-negotiable. The first person to visit after family was Nathaniel, who brought flowers and tears and a promise whispered to his sleeping granddaughter. You'll never know what it's like to be anything less than treasured. The phone call came at midnight, their daughter's first cry echoing through the hospital room. But it was Nathaniel's words that made Diana's heart soar. She sounds strong, just like her mother, just like she was always meant to be. Some stories end with happily ever after. This one ends with happily ever stronger. 5 years after Grace's birth, Diana Martinez Thompson stood in her home office, watching her daughter play in the garden while conducting a video conference with foundation directors in 12 cities. The Diana Martinez Foundation had grown beyond anything she'd imagined, a network of support that had helped over 10,000 women and children build new lives. The Atlanta Center is ready to expand, reported the director from Georgia. We have funding secured and a waiting list of 200 women. Approved, Diana replied, making notes on her tablet. Nathaniel will coordinate with legal on the property acquisition. At 62, Nathaniel had found his calling in the careful work of building rather than consuming. He'd moved to New York permanently 3 years earlier, taking a small apartment near the foundation offices and dedicating his life to the work of repair. He was, Diana often marveled, a completely different person than the man who'd once tried to own her. Mama, Grace called from the garden, her voice bright with 5-year-old excitement. Look what I made. Diana ended the conference call and walked outside to admire her daughter's creation. An elaborate fairy house built from twigs, flowers, and pure imagination. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Diana said, crouching down to examine the tiny structure. "I made it for the sad ladies who visit Grandpa Nathaniel at work." Grace explained with the matter-of-fact kindness of a child raised in a house where helping others was as natural as breathing. Grace called Nathaniel Grandpa and James Papa, having easily absorbed the complexity of her blended family. She spent Saturday afternoons with Nathaniel, learning about business and responsibility. She spent evenings with James, learning about art and creativity. And she spent every day with Diana, learning that a woman could be powerful and kind, successful and nurturing, strong and gentle all at once. "That's very thoughtful," Diana replied. "I'm sure they'll love it." Marcus emerged from the house, camera in hand as always. At 28, he'd become one of New York's most sought-after photographers, specializing in portraits that captured people's essential humanity. "Family dinner tonight?" he asked, settling onto the grass beside them. "Of course. Your father's bringing dessert." "Which father?" Grace asked with a grin that showed her missing front teeth. "Grandpa Nathaniel," Diana clarified. "Papa James is cooking." The easy way her family navigated these distinctions never ceased to amaze Diana. Grace had grown up understanding that families could be complex and still be loving, that people could hurt each other and still choose to build something beautiful together. That evening, as had become tradition, the five of them gathered around Diana's dining room table. James served the meal he'd spent the afternoon preparing. Nathaniel shared stories from the foundation's work. Marcus showed photographs from his latest project, and Grace entertained everyone with kindergarten adventures. "I have news," Marcus announced as they finished dinner. For pairs of eyes focused on him expectantly. Sarah said yes. The table erupted in celebration. Sarah was a teacher Marcus had been dating for 2 years. A kind, intelligent woman who understood the complicated dynamics of his family and loved him for his ability to navigate them with grace. When Diana asked, tears of joy already starting. "Next spring, we want Grace to be the flower girl, if she's interested." "Yes," Grace shouted, bouncing her chair. "Can I wear a princess dress?" "Absolutely," Marcus assured her. Later, as they cleaned up together, Diana found herself watching the interactions around her kitchen. Nathaniel washing dishes beside James, both men comfortable in their respective roles in her life. Marcus drying glasses while planning his future with a woman who'd never known the dysfunction that had once defined their family. Grace arranging her fairy house on the windowsill, secure in the knowledge that she was treasured by everyone around her. "You okay?" James asked, appearing at her elbow with the intuitive awareness that had characterized their 7-year marriage. "Just thinking about how far we've all come," Diana replied, leaning into his familiar warmth. "Any regrets?" Diana considered the question seriously. Her life could have been simpler. She could have stayed angry, could have raised Marcus alone, could have built walls instead of bridges. But looking around her kitchen at this strange, wonderful family they created, she couldn't imagine choosing differently. "None," she said firmly. After everyone left, Diana tucked Grace into bed with their nightly ritual of gratitude sharing. "What are you grateful for today, sweet girl?" "My fairy house, and Marcus getting married, and that Grandpa Nathaniel is teaching me about helping people, and that Papa James makes funny faces when he cooks." "What about you, Mama? What are you grateful for?" Diana looked down at her daughter, this confident, curious, kind little person who would grow up believing she could be anything, do anything, become anything. "I'm grateful for second chances," she said, "and third chances and fourth chances and all the chances that led us here." Grace fell asleep easily, the way children do when they feel completely safe. Diana stood in her doorway for a moment, marveling at the peace in her daughter's face. In her own bedroom, she found James reading financial reports for the foundation, a task he'd volunteered for despite having no obligation to her work beyond love. "The numbers look good," he said, setting aside the papers as she joined him in bed. "You're going to be able to expand into international programs within 2 years." Diana curled into his arms, thinking about the global reach their work might achieve. Women in other countries facing the same struggles as she'd once faced, finding hope in programs built from her experience. "Do you know what I realized tonight?" she said. "What? The best revenge isn't destroying the person who hurt you. It's becoming so successful they have to watch you shine. But the best victory isn't revenge at all. It's becoming someone who can transform pain into purpose." James kissed the top of her head. "And what's your purpose now?" Diana thought about the woman she'd been. Scared, diminished, convinced she was worthless. Then she thought about the woman she'd become. Powerful, confident, using her success to lift others. "To make sure no other woman has to disappear to find herself," she said. "To build a world where daughters like Grace never doubt their worth. Where sons like Marcus learn that love means supporting, not controlling." "And Nathaniel?" James asked gently. "Nathaniel learned that some people are worth becoming better for, even when they don't have to forgive you." In his small apartment across town, Nathaniel sat at his desk, writing in the journal his therapist had recommended. He wrote about gratitude, about second chances, about the privilege of watching Diana build something beautiful from the wreckage he'd helped create. He wrote about his granddaughter's fairy house and his son's engagement and the woman who taught him that strength doesn't require anyone else to be weak. Most of all, he wrote about the lesson it had taken him 62 years to learn. That love isn't about possession. It's about becoming worthy of being chosen every single day by people who have every reason to walk away. Some stories end with happily ever after. This one ended with happily ever stronger. A woman who refused to stay gone, a man who learned to let go, and a family built from the revolutionary idea that people can change, forgive, and create something beautiful together. They say you can't change people, but Diana Martinez had discovered something more powerful. You can refuse to accept less than your worth, and sometimes that forces everyone around you to rise to meet you, or reveals that you never needed them to complete you anyway. The most powerful revenge, she'd learned, isn't destroying someone who hurt you. It's becoming so successful they have to watch you shine.